Hello, and welcome to IGN Beyond, episode 550. My name is Jonathan Dornbush, and today we have a very special episode for you. For the next hour and a half, I exclusively will be speaking to you about the Kingdom Hearts lore, the franchise, everything that means so much to me in my life over the last decade plus years. It began with Sora on the Destiny Islands. Him and his friends, Riku and Kairi, began a journey across dimensions. First they appeared in Traverse Town, but oh no, it went so Beyond, and welcome to IGN's Beyond, episode 550. My name is Jonathan Dornbush. I am your host for this very momentous episode. It is, of course, a big landmark, 550, and what better way to celebrate it with the most classic Beyond crew of all time, myself, Barrett, Bam Bam, Courtney.
Holy shnikes.
There we go. Tom, the Pie Man, Marks.
Hello.
Aww.
And Tina, not at all a meanie.
Oh, thanks. I like that. I was wondering what I was going to get. Yeah.
That's a great one.
I like that.
Well, I was also just going to be like the boss, but that seemed too simple.
Yeah.
Want to do that?
I like that one, yeah.
So we are going to go through a lot. Obviously, it's a big episode. We are going to look back on some of our favorite PlayStation games from every generation of PlayStation consoles, including PSP and Vita. We did not forget. We're going to go through that a little later in the show. We're also going to answer your questions. Reader Mail Rapid Fire is back. We're going to hear from the Facebook group of Beyond. We are also, though, going to start with a lot of news. It is a sort of a post-E3 time, but games don't stop anymore.
It's very dry out there.
So we have a lot. You mean the heat or the gaming industry?
I'm just talking about like new stuff. I feel like we were scrounging for scraps this week, you know?
But the more we think about it, I think
stuff.
there's a lot to talk about today.
Yeah, there's some cool stuff to talk about, but it's not a lot of stuff.
It's
and
more like cultural stuff than new stuff, but that's stuff.
Yes.
It is
That
stuff.
counts as stuff.
And we are going to jump. We are going to jump into, of course, one of the biggest games of the world, probably the biggest game, Fortnite, with Season 5 starting later this week. As you're listening, Season 5 may already be happening because, just so you know, Beyond is now going to be airing Wednesdays on beyond.ign.com. You can get it on IGN, beyond.ign.com, a full 24 hours earlier than you can get it on any other platforms. You, of course, be able to listen to it wherever you do normally watch it on YouTube, listen to it on
And what time specifically on Wednesdays?
It is 3 p.m. PT, I'm going to assume.
Pacific Standard Time.
Pacific
There you go.
time.
Yeah,
Yes. So 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Yes.
All other time zones. I don't have a web.
You'll
browser
have
in
to
front
do
of
the
me
map.
to
You'll have
coordinate.
to like open up the
Google
weird
does
map.
that
Yeah,
now.
Google will do
Yeah.
it for you.
Yeah.
Figure out all the time zones.
Yes, but so look forward to that new schedule. You, of course, be getting the usual Beyond and your usual crew as we talk about everything PlayStation. But, of course, Fortnite Season 5, there have been a lot of teases happening. The rift happened in the game. There was that massive rift explosion. There have been multiple rifts, and now pieces of the game are appearing in the real world. We've seen the Durr Burger appear in the desert.
Yes.
A bunch of llamas are appearing all over
3
Europe.
llamas.
There are even more now. They found more.
really?
Yeah, in
Aw.
Poland and a few other countries.
Have people
3 made
opened
sense.
the llamas?
I don't know. I haven't.
I feel like that. Like I feel like people need to open the llamas to see if there's anything cool in it.
They're asking
'Cause that's-
for it, right?
Right.
Right?
Like
They're like
I
their
would.
pinata.
That's the whole point of the llama in the game is like you go and you open it up and you get a bunch of cool loot.
It's a loot llama.
Yeah, exactly.
But so these things have been appearing in the real world and disappearing in the game. The Durr Burger did at least. So there have been all these little teases of the rifts sort of being interdimensional travel. And then we're also getting these small teases, including these images that have an axe, which a lot of people thought was the God of War axe. It is not. But we've seen that.
I don't know. Corey Barlog said some stuff on Twitter.
Corey Barlog did officially confirm God of War's assets were stolen
confirm.
by Epic Games. No, of course not. Corey was just having a very fun joke with Nick Chester from Epic. But they, so we've had that image. We saw a mask, so I believe a kitsune mask, as one of the first teaser images. So do we all assume it's going to be sort of like pulling from all of time?
Oh, I assumed it was
the
a
running
real life
theory.
Fortnite. Just drop everybody into a map. Since stuff was appearing in real life, I assumed that's what the case was.
There was also like a Western carriage that appeared in the game, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
in Moisty Mire, I believe.
Yeah, like a wagon, and then
And
there was
something else.
there was like an anchor, I think,
Yeah, an
dropped
anchor.
somewhere else. Yeah, it's this weird thing where it's probably going to be like some sort of, like you said, like interdimensional, all crashing together. It kind of gives them free reign to just do whatever they want at this point, which isn't really far off from Fortnite already.
It makes sense for the rifts too, because if stuff is just getting like sucked through them and sucked out of them into the real world, then yeah, you can play around with anything, any kind of time time differentiation.
I
too.
do love that they took it out of the game.
Yes.
Then when they put it in the real world, is like if they had just been like, oh, here's this thing that's real, then it wouldn't have been nearly as cool as like this is getting sucked out of the game. It's such a funny, weird ARG.
Our Earth is now canon in the Fortnite universe.
Right, exactly.
We're part of the war.
I'm such a new Fortnite player. Like the rift at the very top and like in the sky. I started playing Fortnite, I think like 3 weeks ago, and now like it was definitely post E3. I don't remember when E3 was, like a year ago at this point, I hope.
It feels that way.
And we're already prepping for Comic-Con. Oh God. And so I started recently playing Fortnite like 2 or 3 weeks ago. And when I looked up at that rift, I thought it had just always been there in the game. That's how much of it. But then like I learned, and then I saw the video of the rocket going through like all of these different portals and rifts and whatnot. And it was
You
really
need to
interesting.
write like a diary entry of what it's like to just join Fortnite as a new player. Like, what's with all these llamas and like this
True.
thing in the sky? And people are getting excited.
Why is it so
and building
easy?
things.
Why is it easier to get a victory royale on Switch than it is getting a championship in Mario Tennis? I don't know. Weird.
Barrett, save that for your personal Mario Tennis podcast.
Okay, yes, I know. Every
Joining that.
Thursdays on. No, I'm kidding.
But so yeah, it's clear that they are, I would presume, keeping with the same map, and it'll just be sort of terraformed as they have in the past with these new seasons. The big question that I have for all of you, though, is where does Fortnite go from here? Like, having objects from the game appear in the real world is such a really cool and clever marketing ploy, but like, what do you do for season 6? How do you top this?
It's
Do more of it.
legitimately Fortnite in real life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the only way.
I think the we were talking about this yesterday, I believe, with Goldfarb was, I think the next big thing you should do is like have your stuff, like if you're trying to do this ARG weird stuff, have whatever's in the map appear in other games.
Yeah.
And like if they're trying to do like a cross promotion, like they had John Wick a season or two ago or whatever. If they want to do more partnerships like that, they could
Thanos, obviously,
yeah, like you could sneak in like their weird stuff into like other games and patch it, and like people can find it and can be this whole like thing that people discover, like, oh, what is season 6 going to be about?
Well, the God of War thing was like not real, right? But like
It
also
could
that's
be.
not a bad idea.
Yeah.
Like
They
that's
have
a
done
pretty
crossovers in the past.
right, and that would be a pretty funny promotion, like you're saying. Of maybe that will be the inspiration for something. Where,
Like God of War gets like DLC, and it's like this whole side quest, and at the very end you see like the hamburger head like stuck in a wall or something. You're like, oh my God,
That
it's happening.
classic Norse god, Durburger. But Dur is spelled with like 3 J's, so
Yeah,
it works in the fiction.
yeah.
Yeah, I have to assume they're going to keep escalating it with each season. Though the thing about different games, obviously Epic makes the Unreal Engine. So there are a lot of games already licensing Unreal, so there are partnerships in place that establish that precedent. Are there any games you would like to see have things appear in Fortnite, or that you think like Fortnite should cameo in those games? Is there anything?
PUBG. I want to see
obvious
that
answer.
happen
Yeah.
because PUBG is one of those games. PUBG uses Unreal, so like I feel like it would be. They've had so many conflicts in the past of like butting heads here and there, back and forth, that it would be really nice to just see PUBG and Fortnite kind of come together and be like, you know what, let's coexist for.
That'd be
for a
far
day.
too promotional for them, though.
It would be. It would be. Yeah, it wouldn't ever
wouldn't
happen.
happen.
But I think it would be really funny to see it happen.
Yeah, I can't think of anything specific of like games that use Unreal that I would want to see in Fortnite or the other way around. So I'm
Shovel
not
Knight.
Yeah, what do you want to see?
Shovel Knight, everything.
Ooh, yes.
Shovel Knight would
I
be
want
great,
Shovel Knight
yeah.
in Smash. I want Shovel Knight in Fortnite. I want Shovel Knight everywhere.
I mean, he is basically. He's in pretty much everything already. It would make sense if he shows up.
He's
Fortnite.
in the Banjo-Kazooie ripoff by the people who made Banjo-Kazooie. Ukulele. There we go.
Yeah. Like, and the shovel would make such a good pick, right?
that would be-
It
Oh,
sells
yeah.
itself.
Oh, my God.
Sells itself.
So I mean, now that essentially it's been put out into the world, Corey, please make it happen. I would love to see the God of War axe. I think that would just be like an awesome. If that's your weapon that you're
picking
knocking
with?
down things for resources.
You have to be able to throw it and recall it, though.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
That'd be a little too. That might be a little too OP though. If only like some certain
Pay to win.
Yeah, but that's not what Fortnite's about though.
Right?
It's
Yeah.
pay to look cool, and I've
Yeah.
yet to do it. I've yet to get a battle pass.
Well,
with it.
especially
I'll wait
after-
for the next season.
After Thanos has been introduced as a playable character, I don't know what other crossover could be as big as the villain in one of the biggest movies of all time.
Darth Vader.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, Star Wars crossover.
Anything Star Wars really?
Yeah.
And that's totally possible because they already worked with Disney on Thanos. So, like, just another
you go.
step.
Yeah.
Two played out.
There's an Darth Vader or just Star Wars?
No, Darth Vader,
Darth
but
Vader.
Star Wars, but Darth Vader.
After the Rogue One scene of him destroying everything, I don't know where else you go with him.
Right?
But anyway, that's everything to do with Fortnite. So obviously season 5 will be coming later this week. We will find out what actually is happening, and then we can begin our season 6 predictions almost immediately.
Do it.
Jumping from there, though, we were talking a little bit about God of War. Some fake news, I hate that term, but some news happened that didn't actually happen this week of people thought there was a God of War Netflix series in development. That is not true.
So how did this whole rumor thing start? Like, what happened?
So I believe the president, it was sort of
Twitter.
like, Twitter is normally where everything
Culprit.
It was, I think someone just stored us like a very low level site just presented the idea of like, I have heard rumors of a Netflix God of War show. There's a fan made poster going around of an actor. I think it may even be a Jason Momoa fan shop of him as Kratos. And
Because there have been discussions about him wanting to play as Kratos.
Play
before,
Kratos.
yeah.
And there have been issues where like a fake Dexter poster got passed around and everyone was like, Dexter's returning. So these fan posters go around all the time. And I think people took that as a sign that the Netflix show was a real thing. Cory Barlog, the director of God of War, of course, turned that down. But I think the idea of a God of War TV show or movie is really exciting. Would you want to see that adaptation? Or do
Yeah,
you
why
like the
not?
game?
Netflix is good at what they do. Yeah. And there's a precedent
extent.
for it, too. Well, yeah, to an extent. Yeah, that's true.
Well, would it be game canon? Would it be the original series? Would it be the new setting?
What do you want it to be?
I don't know. I feel like they would have to do Norse, right? I think if they went back to Greece, it would be very jarring, especially if they're trying to make, we don't know this yet, but if they're trying to make more God of War games, presumably in the same setting, then wouldn't you would want it to continue with that. I'd love if it was similar to the game story, but not beholden to it in the same way that movie games that are just the exact plot of the movie are usually garbage. I feel like that goes the other way too, where if you just take a game and turn it into a movie exactly, it's usually not very compelling. But
Probably someone's side story or something explored in more detail.
right, something like that too. But I don't know. I'd be game. It'd just have to be the right people and the right production and the right script and all that stuff.
8 episodes of Mimir telling you stories in a boat.
I mean, I'd be super good at that.
I would watch. There's a show called Jim Henson's Storyteller where it's basically an actor who's playing a storyteller giving a different short story every time. And I just like the idea of a series where it's Mimir telling stories of Norse mythology. And
Yeah.
the
I'd be
catalyst
down
for
for
everything.
Just animated or something?
Yeah.
I'd be awesome. A Mimir animated TV show of just Norse myth would be so cool.
Anyway,
Is it
Sony
just his head,
Netflix
though?
calling.
Yes.
Just in the corner the entire time, staring at you.
Like a new Clippy, just narrating the entire
I
thing.
see you're having issues with your boat. How may
I mean,
be of
he's
assistance?
as chatty, so.
Oh, yeah.
True. I was thinking about this a lot when we were talking about this yesterday, and I was thinking about who would I even if we were to do this adaptation of God of War Netflix. I think you do an adaptation of the Norse stuff, and then even do flashbacks to what his time was like in Greece, and get a young God of War actor in there, and then Brian Malkowitz, who's in the back, cue up this photo. It's called Barrett's Friend. I got my good friend Yusuf from Ubisoft, who did say we were allowed to use this picture of him. I think that goatee is great for young Kratos.
Is this the casting right now?
Yeah, this is your pitch.
Yeah,
This
so
is
we're
my
diving
pitch.
into Barrett's dream casting, which involves Atreus wearing sort of like a bubble wrap.
I didn't want to
Photoshop
show
of
the
Atreus.
picture
Yes.
of the person next to him since we didn't get permission from that person.
Of course.
So I just put Atreus there just so have you see having Yusuf next to
Sure.
Atreus.
To be honest,
That's
this is
great.
a lot longer than I've ever needed to stare at Yusuf shirtless. So thank you for that, Barrett. So
Thank you,
You
Yusuf.
want Yusuf to play the God of War Kratos.
Yes, and I think Yusuf would want to play Kratos as well.
Okay. Who would both of you want as Kratos? Do you have any
Oh,
idea?
I don't know. I haven't thought about it.
Putting you on the spot.
Yeah.
I think that the people, a couple of the people that just do the voices in the game are now become this is the type of thing where Hollywood is infecting games, which is great. I'm totally fine with that. But it also means that the guy who does the voice of Baldur could just be Baldur.
Yeah.
He doesn't look very far off. He's a great actor.
Jeremy
Baldur's-
Davis does, obviously he was in Lost, he's done live action before, so it would be weird, especially with that character model so based on Jeremy Davies, to not be him.
Right, like, and I don't remember the name of the actor who did the voice of Kratos, but
Christopher
like,
Judge.
Yeah, Christopher Judge. Like, I don't think he'd be a bad Kratos either, right?
yeah.
Like,
So if they went
I
the
mean, he's
Castlevania
absolutely
route,
proven himself already. But-
Yeah.
yeah.
if they went the Castlevania route and did like an animated series, it'd be
Then you just
like,
do the
super
voices,
easy.
yeah.
Yeah, you just need voice actors. Yeah, I like that idea actually.
That voice cast is so great, and especially I do think there's obviously a lot more, especially on a Netflix budget, that you can probably do with animation than you can necessarily with live action. In terms of live action, I've seen Jason Momoa thrown out a lot.
He'd be good.
I've seen Vin Diesel thrown out, largely I think because he is bald.
And I also think it was like he was campaigning for himself to play Kratos when the original
When it
three
was
games.
the old ones, yeah.
I'm pretty sure he has a Photoshop image of himself as Kratos as like one of his Facebook images. Don't ask me why I know that.
Sure.
But
You do whatever you do in your free time.
I'd want Vin Diesel in a God of War movie. I don't know if I'd want Vin
Yes.
Diesel in a God of War TV show.
Yeah.
Maybe that's
That's
just
a lot of 8 hours in Vin Diesel.
Yeah, it's a lot of Vin Diesel, and I'm a Diesel fan,
Sure.
but I don't know if I don't know if he'd
diva.
thrive there. Diesel diva, yes,
Yeah.
I'm a Diesel
Fan
diva.
term.
It is now. It's probably not. I'm sorry, Vin.
I run on Diesel. Let's just put it that way.
I like this. Yeah.
Someone's probably come up with that.
I think also
Surely.
Jamon Hunsu could be good in the role.
I'm not sure
He
I
was
recognize the name.
Kovath, I want to say, in Guardians of the Galaxy. He has a brief cameo in that, and he's also going to be
Oh,
in Captain
yeah,
Marvel.
yeah.
He's also in Blood Diamond.
Yeah.
If that helps.
He could do
at
it.
all. I think he could be solid. He's a good actor, and I think the role, especially in the new Kratos, requires a lot more subtlety than you would necessarily need with the old Kratos. You just need yelling as a prerequisite for an actor. But I think Jamon could do a pretty good job.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Do we, in terms of with these adaptations, I think Castlevania did it pretty smartly as an animated adaptation. Do you want to see more video game adaptations? There are a lot of movies in development. We have the Gears of War movie they've talked about. So many other movies on the horizon at some point. Do you want that, or do you feel like Hollywood should move away from that?
I mean, if they're well written, sure, why not?
Yeah.
But
Sure.
there isn't a precedent for that.
Yeah.
So that's the problem. Is like I think we were only recently seeing like Castlevania we weren't even sure. It was a crapshoot. And it ended up being good, but that's not ever the case. Like I think more often than not you can predict that it's not gonna be great, and that's gonna be the case.
That's what I was gonna say. Is I don't really care necessarily if it's video game or not. I just want good stories to be told. I don't want bad scripts to be funded just because it's like someone in Hollywood is like, we need a God of War thing, right? That is not reason enough for me to want a God of War TV show or movie. I want somebody, preferably who is experienced making God of War stuff, to say, I have this idea that would not be right for a video game. It would be right for this other medium. Let's make it. And then support be thrown behind that.
Yeah, it'd be cool if they take it the South Park route and have like people who actually worked on like the primary medium go and collaboratively work on like the secondary one that whatever they're coming up with.
Right.
Yeah.
Then at least there's some kind of like investment in it.
I think for me, with games that are already so story heavy, I think it's hard to do. Like I'm not convinced of like they've been talking about Uncharted movie for years. They've been talking about Last of Us movie for years.
Yeah.
And I don't think you could really pull that off because those stories have been told already so expertly. I think if you were to do like a video game, Netflix series or movie, you should do something that is very minimal on story, like Castlevania. I think that's why Castlevania worked out so well, because there's like cool lore and stuff, but all they really need to do was like sort of make their own story to put it all into even more context. And that's why I think like very vague story things like Zelda or something like that would be able to work in like a Netflix series. There was something like that rumored a couple of years back as well, which I was like, all you need to do is do Samurai Jack the show, but then put Zelda's skin over it. That's what you got. That's all you need. So I think it's, if there's a game that has like sort of minimal story and whatnot, then that you can build off of, I think that's where they can pull it off. But yeah.
Yeah, the Last of Us adaptation, which seems to have stalled, was a bit more of a direct adaptation. I do like at least that the Uncharted movie that they're going for is like young Nathan Drake. It's basically young Indiana Jones. So it's not retelling the same story we've played through, which is a nice approach. But speaking of Uncharted, we learned some fun facts about Nathan Drake. Namely, bullets don't hit that man. He's the luckiest human being in that universe.
Well, they do. They only hit him once.
They do.
And then
yes,
you die.
yeah. He gets a one shot. So on Twitter, animator Jonathan Cooper revealed that Drake doesn't actually get hit by bullets until the very last one. He said, to quote, Drake doesn't ever take bullet damage. The red UI that shows hits is to represent his luck running out. And so eventually his luck runs out so much that an enemy does actually hit him. And Amy Hennig, who obviously worked on the franchise for a while, did also confirm this, that that's what the implementation was.
It would have been cool if they had actually sort of shown that off in the game, but there's really no indication in the game, especially since the health bar or luck bar or whatever is red.
Sure.
So there's it's a cool back end thing to sort of joke about it, he's this magic man who, every bullet he shoots hits a million people, but nothing hits him until he dies. But there's no real thing indicating that.
They don't state that.
Yeah, exactly.
So they want to capture the narrative meaning for it, which is you can't get shot 1,000 times. I think they wanted to ground it a little bit more.
Yeah, and Hennig did say that they were trying to capture the essence of Indiana Jones in the movies they were obviously
exactly.
Which
I actually have some quotes to contribute to this conversation. Brand new quotes coming at you from from my good friend Bruce Shelley. Thank you, Bruce, for giving me some context on this. He worked on with Naughty Dog for a long time, and he said that they made it red because it's dangerous. It gives you that indicator. And they actually played. He said there were versions in Uncharted where we tried white flashes, but none of our playtest players responded to it. White wasn't seen as a threat, and no one knew what it meant. So that's why it's red. It gives you that indicator. It's kind of like the, a stop sign or the red light on a traffic signal. Just kind of gives you an indicator that this is a dangerous thing.
Or blood.
Yeah, or
But
blood.
not blood.
So he said.
But blood.
He said the shape's not like blood splatters, and we didn't want to make it bloody due to tone, and had a fear that while making it a shooter, somehow it would become kind of like Gears of War, and they didn't want to lean into that kind of a shooter.
Gotcha.
And it would just be awkward to do if you really did want to represent. So internally they called it a hit indicator, and they didn't want to make it representative of a luck meter, because then what would you do, a horseshoe or a 4-leaf clover or something? It'd just be weird.
Yeah.
As a UI thing.
I would have had to make him a really bad Irish stereotype.
Yeah, exactly. It wouldn't have worked. So they went with red. Yeah. And then, he said that the main things that they were trying to accomplish on the design side was indicating damage, that you were in an unsafe position, and the direction of the threat so that the player could react. Those were their design goals. And then in The Last of Us, you had the situation where you had to patch yourself up. So that kind of narratively tied that one in for that kind of role.
Yeah. My favorite part about this coming up now, though, is that they then, when people were so kind of startled by this, they then pointed to an interview or an article from IGN in 2007 where the writer was talking about this being a mechanic, that it was actually luck. And it's so funny that little things like that, little details, can sometimes just get forgotten.
Yeah.
And you just move on and you don't really think about it.
We just dig up news all the time.
Right.
We use it.
And that's what the entire subreddit Today I Learned is based around, right? Is these things that people already knew that are still cool to learn years later.
Well, it especially makes sense in sort of the nascent days of a franchise when people aren't that interested in every little bit of minutia about it.
Right.
For that not to matter to them. But it is funny to see these things pop up. We should probably just start for our news cycle just looking at old IGN articles from 10 years ago and just being
things
what
you
did we
didn't
write
care about
then?
before that you care about
This
now.
is big
Yeah.
data,
It's true though. People have gotten a lot more invested in the behind the scenes development processes, and they're a little bit more knowledgeable about them, and people are a little bit more open about talking about them. So you get these kinds of quotes that we're able to share.
Yeah, I think they talked a lot about just sort of similar in my mind at GDC earlier this year about the construction of Horizon and how they went through all these elements of the dinosaurs and till their full evolution. People, when Horizon was first announced, would not have cared that the dinosaurs were these very chunky looking funny block men who ran around environments and just slid down the sides of cliffs. But after that game sells almost 10 million copies, you suddenly become really interested in every little bit of it, which I love.
Yeah.
But yeah, I hope little things about Uncharted continue to pop out in the years to come, especially however it secretly influenced Last of Us Part 2, probably.
Sure, yeah.
We'll probably find something
More
out 5 years from
bandages,
now. Exactly.
We got to be realistic.
Pulling arrows out of your shoulder now.
Yeah. You're actually supposed to keep those in. You're supposed to break it off because then it's bleeding unless you can show it right
that
there.
demo just still freaks me out. I know everybody everybody talks about the Death Stranding, him pulling off the toenail, which is also
no, that's
you're
wrong.
welcome for putting that image in your head again, but also just Ellie just ripping out the arrow still just bugs me. And
I had actually blocked out the toenail.
Yeah,
so
me
thank you
too.
very
I
much,
forgot.
Barrett.
That was one of those things we didn't want to dig back up. Yes.
Anytime I'm on an episode of Beyond, I'm just gonna bring that up.
The second
try
T in Barrett stands for toenail.
Yes.
Fun
Oh
fact.
boy.
Yes.
So anyway, look forward to Barrett's toenail facts in future weeks. He won't be on the show again, I
Every
promise.
Thursday
Mario
podcast
Tennis and
with Mario
Toenails.
Tennis.
Yeah. We got there together.
We did.
The MT&T Mario Tennis and Toenails podcast,
Yeah.
Oh, God.
hosted by Barrett Courtney.
Yep.
I'll be there for the first 30 minutes for Mario Tennis, and then I'm out.
For the last 2 hours about toenails.
I hate this picture we painted of me.
You painted it. What are you talking
True,
about?
I did this to myself.
You've painted it with your tennis racket brush.
Okay.
Moving on to actual games coming out in the future. Darksiders 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It has a release date. You may not have heard about it much since it was in IGN First last year. And it is in IGN First again. All this month, you will find out more about Darksiders 3. If you're watching the video show, you can see the latest trailer, which shows you Fury, the main character's fire form. Which
It's
is
her version of Super Saiyan.
Yes.
Gotcha.
And she's badass in fire form, so I will happily take that. We learned from our first bit of news for the first, Darksiders 3 is now coming out November 27th. So before the
around
end
my
of the
birthday.
This is going to be a stacked fall.
it is a pretty packed fall.
But I like that it's kind of at the end of November. It's a little separated.
It's like
from some other
it's going to
stuff.
be a little closer to Smash Brothers.
Yeah.
Because Smash Brothers is the 7th?
December 7th, yes,
Yeah. So
Two very different niches in terms of games you want to play, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so, yeah, this is for me personally, a long-awaited title. I've loved the last two Darksiders. Darksiders 2 came out in 2012, and they've done reissues of 1 and 2, but that sort of did not satiate my thirst for a essentially Zelda-like, but with the Horsemen of the Apocalypse, which is a pretty great thing for me as someone who went to Catholic school for 13 years. I like cool games that use biblical mythology. So we also learned, though, there's going to be a normal $60 version, a $149 version that includes an 11-inch Fury statue, a premium box, a steelbook, an art book, a soundtrack, and cosmetic DLC, as well as a $400 Apocalypse edition, which includes everything in that previous edition, plus a wall scroll, an amulet necklace, and then 3 more statues in addition to Fury of War and Death, who are the protagonists of Darksiders 1 and 2, and Volgrim, who is their main character.
So
that
I've
it?
never played any of
That
these
is it.
games. That's definitely
That's
the
it.
edition that I want, right?
The $400,
Yeah.
if you've never
Played
been into
any
Darksiders
Darksiders,
before,
that's not all right.
It's
Sweet.
made for you.
If you don't go hard, right, then what's
Yeah,
the point?
go
But if
home.
you've read
Exactly.
Revelations,
Okay, cool. I'll get
or
it.
do I have an addition for you?
So with Darksiders 1 and 2, those have been, or the first one was remastered for this genre.
So they've brought both back out.
Gotcha,
Yes.
gotcha.
Darksiders 2, I believe, is the definitive edition, which is not a fun word to say.
Gotcha.
Maybe only topped in bad names by Remastered.
Oh, I
Yeah,
love
yeah.
Red Faction Remastered Edition.
It's painful to say.
Yeah.
But it seems cool. Like the IGN first coverage that we've had so far has gotten me interested in the game, though.
I want to see more gameplay, and I know we have a lot more coming with our IGN First this month, and I'm excited to see more of that because this first gameplay clip didn't fully sell me yet. I think, and
Because it was just straight combat.
right. It
small
was
glimpse
it was
of
just a
one mode.
really kind of narrow slice of what we're going to see more of going forward, and it got me reinterested in the series. Right, it reminded me that it exists and is probably a thing that comes from this really good pedigree. But yeah, I definitely want to see more, and I'm really, really excited to do so this month.
And possibly by the time you're listening to this podcast, we will have had some more gameplay on the site.
Plug.
Yeah,
Especially if
plug,
you're
plug, plug.
listening this in 2019. The game's already out. Sorry. Like you were saying, Tom, it was cool to see more of the game and see Fury's sort of dexterity in combat, but I do want to see more because Darksiders 1 to 2 was a pretty big jump in that they've made it so much more of an open world game. Like 1 really nailed these very cool dungeon Zelda-esque puzzles with here's an item, use it for these puzzles, but 2 really opened it up into such a larger scale RPG open world sort of thing. So I'm curious if 3 takes another big step like that or is essentially 2 but a new story,
Right.
and how much they actually change in the process.
Yeah.
Hopefully, we find out a lot more, and you will be able to actually stick in to IGN.com for a lot more on Darksiders 3 all throughout the month. So keep
it.
watching.
Keep it locked to IGN.com.
Flirting with the audience there.
He's
What I
trying to make up for all the toenails off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's not mention it.
Let's not bring that back.
I'm going to bring it up every time.
Oh boy.
Oh, Jesus.
All right, moving on from all of that,
Please.
Darksiders, toenails, the whole We're moving on to the main discussion of the show.
Ooh.
Our favorite games from each generation of PlayStation platforms. This nostalgia nexus of what we're talking about.
Yeah, not necessarily the best game.
No.
But
Yes.
just
There's
our
a
favorite.
difference.
Yes. So these are not the games we think sort of achieve the pinnacle of design and story and everything in those generations, but just our favorite games and why they stick so much in our craw for all these years later. As I turn suddenly into a New Orleans cool, smooth talking guy. So we're going to start with PlayStation, the original,
PSX.
not the event.
So when did
Not
when did-
Very
PS1.
confusing.
So like I was very young when the PS1 was a thing. So when was it called just PSX, and when did they just transition over to just calling it the PlayStation? I didn't hear it being called the
timing.
PSX until I started working here.
I'm actually not sure 100% about the timing. I always, as someone who owned one, just referred to it as the PlayStation. I wasn't too embroiled in following games coverage at the time, though, so I didn't know if PSX.
We
was
were
still
young.
exactly-
We were like
exactly.
5.
Yeah.
No,
Whatever.
I thought it was the other way around.
I thought so
it was
as
the
well.
PlayStation, and then they
eventually.
added the X,
X,
after a
yeah.
couple other PlayStations had come out.
It was like PS1,
Right.
Like written out the word "one," as I saw a lot used in like marketing and.
And that's
press
what they call like
releases
when on the PS3, like if you had the PS1 classics.
Yes. Yeah.
So
What are we gonna do when we hit PlayStation 10?
Oh no.
they're
just an
screwed.
existential
Like
crisis.
they'll have to
Just
skip it.
Just
It's like
skip it, yeah.
like Windows skips
Yeah, that's true.
9. Like Sony will just have to
Right.
skip 10. There you go.
The PS11.
There you go.
Yeah.
So anyway, let's start with our favorite games from that era. Barrett, to my right.
Oh,
Why don't you
hi.
kick
What's
it
up? So I never owned a PlayStation 1, but my babysitter from the time I think I was, I had to have been 5, maybe 6, and she had a PlayStation 1. She had all these different games, but the one that always grabbed me the most was Crash Bandicoot Warped. And that was the only Crash Bandicoot she owned. So that was the only one from my childhood that I had ever played was Warped. So when it got remastered, that was the one I was most excited for. And then when I played it over, I was like, man, this is not as great as that.
Ain't
Like
that
it's
how
still
it
fun.
always
It's a
goes?
lesser version. I think it's better than 1, but it's not as good as 2.
Yeah.
And I think the boss fights, like going back to them, are very disappointing. Like they're super easy. Whereas like as a kid, I was playing these really cool boss fights, like facing it against Tiny, and like the end of the game, it's like the two masks like doing the weird Harry Potter laser beam thing with each other, and you're fighting Cortex. It was just like the coolest experience as a very, very young Barrett Courtney in the 90s, maybe very, very early 2000s. I forget.
When you were 2 years old.
Yes, exactly.
Was this like your babysitter's way of taking care of you, just like shoving?
Oh yeah. Just like play the thing, and then
It worked.
every once in a while we would watch Terminator 2, which I was probably way too young to be watching at the time.
Also a classic though.
The two big classics.
Crash Bandicoot
Warped.
Warped and Terminator 2,
That's a good babysitter.
right?
Clearly, it worked.
Exactly. And then we would
Shout out
also
to
watch
Babysitter.
NSYNC music videos. So
Aw,
the
so
trifecta
90s.
there.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah.
Tina,
Hi.
what is your favorite game from the PlayStation?
So yeah, I also had a sort of similar experience. I didn't have a PlayStation X. Growing up, my parents were very against screens. And for those of you not watching the video version, I air quoted screens because everything with a screen was just one thing to them. But we did get access because my brothers were pretty sneaky about like making trades at school. And one of the games that they managed to get their hands on was Parappa the Rapper.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it was a good time. I mean, I think it was like the original rhythm game or one of, so kind of like broke the genre for that, which was interesting at the time. And it was also cool because during the same time that it came out was also kind of the peak of the like West Coast, East Coast rap rivalry, like in the hip hop world.
Yes.
And so it
the
was-
rapper was like one of the big names out
yeah,
there.
you know,
Like,
he
really
was just
trying
like
to-
laying
Who
all
was
those
he-
diss tracks.
Who was he repping though?
Tupac
Was
and
he
Parappa.
West Coast or East Coast though? That's
He
the
was
big part.
middle ground, so that's the thing. That's the thing
was the
about
heartland.
Parappa the Rapper. Yeah, it was this very like pure look at like at hip hop at the time where like things were very rapidly descending into violence. And I think it's cute to look at it and like he's just rapping about like getting his driver's license because he wants to impress this girl that he's in love with.
Hey, Tina, I seem to remember some kicking and punching in Parappa the
There
Rapper.
were, but it was just at the air.
Playful.
Okay.
Kick, punch, turn.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like when
Violence.
you're
Yeah,
alone in
violence
your
in
room
video
and
games.
pretending to see Naruto,
That's
and
true.
you're like, oh,
Violence
what?
towards the air is fine.
I
We
would
condone
love
that.
to read a like college essay about Parappa the Rapper. juxtaposed against
Yeah.
the East-West Coast rivalry. I would read that.
If you're in college and you're in like
Please
an
write
English,
this
like
for us.
if
Yeah.
you're trying to like be an English major, just pitch that as like something that you need to
Your
write.
final paper.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Because I think it was actually the same year. Like I think it was released in Japan in '96 and then in the U.S. in '97, I believe. And that's like actually the years where everything went rapidly downhill for East Coast versus West Coast. So yeah, moment of silence.
Hi, Tom.
Hi.
Tom, you put down a lot of games.
Don't make me choose. So this is the problem: is that I was very young when I had, and I literally messaged my brother last night to try to talk about this stuff and like what games he remembered, and I was like, "What games did we play a lot on PlayStation 1?" And he was like, "We never owned a PlayStation 1," and I was like, "You're wrong." Like, I remember this game and this game. And he was like, "No, like I played those at my friend's house." Like, and so I think what I've determined talking to my dad and my brother is that we borrowed one from a friend for a very long period of time, but never actually owned it ourselves. But like, you can't ask me what my favorite game was because like Tom's dumb 6-year-old childhood brain remembers like Monster Hunter or Monster Rancher being like the best game ever because you could put the discs in and you could swap discs and it was like, oh my God, this is the coolest.
But that's valid. It's
But
not the best
apparently-
game. It's your
But
favorite game.
then I go back and look at reviews, and apparently Monster Rancher was like a bad game. And, like,
Apparently.
the other one I really remember was Digimon World. Like
Yes.
I remember Digimon World being the bomb because you could like attract new Digimon and build up your town and unlock new areas of the island. And then I looked at reviews, and apparently that game was bad. And like it just makes me sad. So I think the actual safe bet game I would go for is Worms Armageddon.
Okay.
Worms Armageddon I played a ton of when I was a kid. Oh man, Worms was very formative in my competitive life as a
Me too, me
child.
too.
And yeah, that will always hold a place in my heart. The new Worms WMD is actually really, really good and lets you tweak settings to basically be exactly like Armageddon. And so yeah, Worms holds a very, very dear place in my heart.
And for me, it would be Spyro 2 Ripto's Rage.
Oh, what a
the
surprise.
Remastered.
Surprise, yeah.
Well, you took Crash, so I also didn't want to be like, actually,
I did it to
Cortex
mess
Strikes
with you.
Back.
You
is
need to
better.
represent. That's fine. Stay on brand.
All of the PlayStation mascots. So Spyro 2 for me was sort of the encapsulation in the way that Crash 2 was sort of the best, I think, mix of that original trilogy. Spyro 2 for me was that best mix of platforming, this insane sort of collectathon that you could do, and just really introducing a very colorful and fun cast of characters and a memorable villain, Ripto, for me. So I think Spyro 1 was a little bit too simplistic, but it really sort of nailed down the idea. And Spyro 3 I never actually owned fully, so I rented it a lot from Blockbuster.
Fake Spyro
and thus
fan.
don't have the best memories of it. But Ripto's Rage, I think, is just such a cool distillation. It had sort of these different regions that you would go to. You would collect a bunch of different talismans. And like as a kid, I was obsessed with collecting every single little thing in that game. I think I beat it like 5 or 6 times. So I'm very excited to see what it looks like in the Reignited trilogy. They haven't shown Ripto's Rage or Year of the Dragon yet, which is the third, but I'm hoping there is a Spyro panel at Comic-Con.
And right before this,
Yes.
we were recording, Toys for Bob tweeted out this whole like tease for Ripto, right?
Yes, yeah. So my thought is they'll probably show Ripto's Rage proper at Comic-Con, but they've shown off the new sort of Ripto design.
Gotcha.
But yeah, this is one of my most sort of like foundational platforming memories is this game, and the amazing graphics, obviously.
Oh, absolutely.
The character design. But no, yeah, this is definitely one of my favorites back then.
I respect it.
Thank you.
I don't know if I agree with it, but I
you
respect it.
That's all I ask.
Well, these are personal picks, right?
No, I know.
Exactly.
So moving on to the PS2. Pretty big.
My
pretty big
first
console.
PlayStation console I ever owned.
And what was your favorite game on it?
Oh,
you go.
So this is one of those things where the games I've played most in my life still to this day were probably from the PlayStation 2 era. And I was thinking about it, like there's all these different games, but even the one that I think I might have played the most, and it's one of those games, even if I'm playing a video game to this day, it's been 2 generations since then. My mom is like, "Oh, you playing a game? Are you playing Bully?" And so like Bully was like one of those, like she just like thinks of video game Bully. That's what he's playing. And I played that game so dang much just because like my mom knew enough to never get me a Grand Theft Auto, but Bully was the teenage like growing up version of Grand Theft Auto where you're riding around on bikes, beating up other kids, stealing or egging old people's houses and stuff like that. And it was I really, really loved it, and I played it so much. Even the next generation, when we got the scholarship edition with all the extra classes and whatnot, I was super into it just because I loved even going to classes. Like they sort of push you, like, oh, you can skip class, and like if you get caught, you get in trouble and all this stuff. But like even the classes themselves were like cool mini games and whatnot, and I would try to get them done like as fast as possible. Essentially, Bully is just the foundation of what I would want a Harry Potter game to be like, and I really want it. And please, I don't know who needs to make it, but please make it happen. So yeah.
You've got Hogwarts Mystery.
No.
That's all you got.
Don't make him sad.
I know. Do you think we'll get a Bully 2?
I've been asking for Bully 2 for so long at this point, and I'm convinced no at this point. Like, they brought it it was like the PS2 Classic to PS4 or whatever, and I thought like that might have been a sign, but we've really heard nothing, and it's just one of those things. If we get it, it'll be down. I think it'll be even next gen. At this point, I feel like it's too late to really announce it for this generation, but I don't know. We'll see. Maybe Rockstar comes out in a year and a half before this generation ends or whatever, and it's like, hey, Bully 2, you've been asking for it, you've been crying about it, whatever. Here, it's coming out next year.
Crying like the kids bullied by that bully.
I think if
That's
GTA,
the real bullying there.
I think if GTA 5 and GTA Online is any indication, the better question is not, are we going to get Bully 2? It's, are we going to ever get a Rockstar game after Red Dead 2?
Yeah.
Because it might just come out and have an online mode added to it or whatever, and that they just update forever, and then that's all they make forever.
Bully can just be a school MMO. They'll somehow make school fun.
Yeah, like someone in the the Red Dead community will make their own version of Bully in the Red Dead Online.
You get
skeptical
a
of
townhouse,
all
you
of
make
this.
a school, you start classes. Tina, what is your favorite game? PS2.
So the PlayStation 2 was actually my first console too. The one that I could actually call my own. Yeah. That like didn't belong to my brothers, so they couldn't kick me off of it.
Right.
And I played a lot of Final Fantasy X over and over and over again. Thank you. But I have a very personal reason attached to it, and it's because at the time I think I was like 12 or so, and I went through a spinal surgery, and it like knocked me out for a few months. And so I wrote this whole thing back when I was at Kotaku about how like I couldn't do like literally anything on my own. My mom had to like help me brush my teeth. It sucked. But when I was in the game, I could go and do whatever. And I was like multiple people and got to explore the world and like take on all these battles, and how it was just like a really fully realized world while I was like literally bedridden at home for a few months.
So you sent that article to me, and you're like, hey, if we can grab anything from this. It was too late. I looked at it literally a minute before that.
Oh, thanks.
But then like, but I read that article like when it originally came out, like it's 5 years
Some
ago.
years ago.
Yeah. And so that blows my mind that was you. And now
Yeah. No, we work together. Yeah.
crazy. And we both love Final Fantasy X.
Yeah. And isn't this a good reason too?
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. I've gone back and played it multiple times over, and it's one of the few times that I've actually had like a physical guidebook that I would reference all the time, because those legendary weapons, you gotta find them and they're hard.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's just so much to do in that game between like Blitzball and like the regular quests and everything, that it gave me a lot to do when I had nothing to do, and I was all like hyped up on Percocet.
Glad Blitzball could be that outlet.
Yeah, right?
None of ours just in Blitzball, let me tell you.
Oh yeah.
Tom?
It's tough.
Oh yeah.
Sorry.
This was the easiest thing in the world for me. I was looking back at the PS2 and I was like, man, the PS2 had some bangers. Like that was a good system.
Oh yeah.
Holy heck. Katamari Damacy. It was the easiest call for me. Katamari Damacy and We Love Katamari kind of as one rolled up ball. Because I think We Love Katamari added a lot of like the co-op and the multiplayer elements were really, really weird and cool, and it just felt like more better, cooler. Like I didn't really care about the intricacies of like what one got wrong and the others got right or whatever. Like I didn't care. It was just more Katamari, and that's all I wanted in the world. Those games are the bomb. They continue to be the bomb. We were talking about it yesterday about whether Katamari would actually hold up nowadays if you haven't played it. And I think the more I was thinking about it, I think it would.
Yeah.
I think it really is a great game. And the other thing about it is that none of the Katamari games that came out after We Love Katamari have been as good. There was one for Xbox, I think 360 or something like that was just not quite there, and there were a couple others that just like weren't quite there. There was a mobile one, right, that just wasn't quite there. If you still have a PS2 or a way to play that game, Katamari Damacy is so good. I listen to the soundtrack minimum. I listen to a song from the soundtrack once a week. I listen to the soundtrack full through at least once a month. Like, man, that game is so fun and so cheerful and so silly and dumb. And we could do a whole show about Katamari. I love Katamari Damacy.
Tune in this Thursday to the Mario Tennis Katamari Toenail podcast.
A full lineup of shows, really.
Yeah.
Thursday is going to be quite the spectacle on everyone. Mine, of course, if you're watching the video show, you can tell by my shirt, is obviously also Final Fantasy X.
Thanks.
Obviously, I rep it constantly. No, it's Kingdom Hearts, of course.
Whoa, what a surprise.
I know, really
Shocker.
going off-brand today. No, if you listen to episode 449, our live show, our delightful, really fun live show,
That's the one we celebrated. We don't celebrate the 50s anymore. We
We're
just
celebrating the one
celebrate the 49s and the 99s, and that's it. That's
just
all
in
we do
case you
now.
don't make it to the next one.
It's true.
Of course, I talked a lot about why I love Kingdom Hearts so much back then. I could decide one or two. Two is the better game, I think, mechanically, and sort of like deep dive into why I love that series. But one, like, so firmly established my love of that world and those characters and what games could be at that time for like a young me. That it just opened me up to like, oh, wow, these are games. Like I've talked about how when I first got the game on Christmas, I put it in, watched the opening cutscene, was so floored, I just kept hitting reset to watch it over and over because I was so
That's
entranced. by it.
adorable.
This is what a game can do? Oh my God. Like, it was just a cool cutscene. But it was so strange, and then he appears on a platform that has a Disney princess and like stained glass on it. And I was just so confused and so enamored with it as a kid who grew up on Disney, that it has sort of cemented my love of RPGs, but also just that series and my obsessive nature, knowing every little thing about it, or I try to. Moving on, though, PSP.
Gotcha.
For those of us who did own PSP or maybe played games later on, I understand not everyone owned a PSP.
So I didn't own a PSP, but my dad's cousin visited Ohio once from Denver, and he had a PSP. He's not a huge gamer, but for some reason he owned one. And he had Star Wars Battlefront 2 specifically for the PSP. Now, I prefer the PlayStation 2 Xbox original version of Battlefront 2, but I don't know, it's just the one game I ever played on PSP. And it was like a light version of the full game, but it was still like you still had the cool modes in there and whatnot. So, Battlefront 2 is a great game.
I played that one a lot, and for
Not
a
the new
mobile
one, but
version,
the old one.
for a mobile version of that franchise, I really played that a lot too. That and NBA, those were my big two PSP
There you
games.
go.
In addition to, I'm just going to say very quickly, Birth by Sleep, Kingdom Hearts, of course, have to be on brand. Plug. It's a great.
What are you
Jonathan-
plugging?
He's plugging Jonathan Dornbush.
Get ready for the Kingdom Hearts and No Toenails podcast.
I'm watching that one.
Damn it.
I've just won by there being no toenails. No, I think it's one of the best non-numbered entries in the franchise and introduced a lot of really important, cool characters. And then they went and did terrible things to Aqua, and now she's evil. We'll get to that at another point. Moving on, Tina, what's your favorite
Hi,
PSP game?
so I did own a PSP, but I didn't play it that much. I don't think anyone really did.
Ouch.
Mine is like, well, I mean,
I have
No,
memories.
right?
Continue.
I have memories of baseball players being shown specifically being like playing the PSP at baseball games, which I thought was really weird. It's
that was
like,
a
wow.
marketing ploy.
Absolutely, it was.
Clearly, it worked.
Yeah, right. So my PSP is currently collecting dust in my parents' house right now, but I did play Burnout Legends, and like I feel like that's a good choice simply by the matter of the fact that Burnout is a good series, and that one stole a lot of tracks from previous titles, so it fits.
That math.
That's what I'm going for.
believe
Yeah, exactly. Thanks.
Anytime. Tom.
I got a PSP secondhand from a friend who was selling it after the Vita had already come out. Like it was many, many years after the PSP. And I played the heck out of Patapon.
Yeah, I'm silently drumming at the floor right now.
Patapon.
Yeah.
That game is so, like, I'm not even a fan of rhythm games, but that game is so my style aesthetically and gameplay wise, and theme, just like how chipper and silly it is, but also like a little bit creepy and dark too. Like, yeah, it was just, I think Patapon is another one of those games that will hold up forever because they chose a very stylistic kind of thing, and they are doing something very, very different with the gameplay. Yeah, I never played the sequels, but man, Patapon 1 I think is just such a good game. Just so cute and silly. And when you really get the rhythm going and they like start chanting and cheering, it like just makes you feel good about like hitting buttons on time. Like you're doing something so silly, but yeah. I love Patapon so much.
I love how many of your picks have just been about like the joy of the game. It's very on brand for you.
Yeah. I was joking. I was like,
Tom Marks being joyful. Like, what's going on there?
every game that I picked like could probably like have been a Nintendo first party game, and like we wouldn't have batted an eyelash at it.
Moving on to the PlayStation 3, where probably we all had some of the most trouble picking a favorite one, except for Barrett.
No.
Barrett had his pretty much on lock.
Well, that's because this game, and I'm just going to call myself out, like, only 1.5 games are, like, exclusive Sony games, because you can't really count Crash anymore, since Crash is, like, the remaster at least is on.
But it was at the time.
It was at the time. And,
You can count Crash.
But even PS3 generation, I didn't own a PS3. I apologize, but I looked at what was going on during that era, and I was like, nah, peace out. I'm going to go to the 360. So this is just my favorite game of that generation, and still my favorite game of all time, which is Batman Arkham City. And that is because, like, the Batman Arkham games got me into like video games as I'm into them now. Like, I was very casual. I was playing Guitar Hero and Rock Band and very casual, just like party games before Batman Arkham. And then Asylum came out, and I was like, oh, I need this, because I was a Batman fan still. And the design of Asylum very much like made me think of like, whoa, like video games got really cool. What was I missing out on? Like, why did I
Batman?
I know. And that's what City felt like, where I think Asylum, I believe, is the better game, but I love City more because it's really just the first 10 minutes and they make you be Bruce Wayne. And you're not in the bat suit, and you have to like climb around as Bruce, and then you put on the bat suit, and then you glide around a city. And that was the moment I was like, I might have teared up as a high schooler, just like, I'm Batman.
That's your Abed moment.
I think you mean I'm Batman.
Yeah, I was gonna say you got to match the voice.
I'm Batman.
There we go.
And like, even just as a Batman fan, like the cool lore and story stuff that they do, like the side missions that would pop up randomly,
They're
like
so
Mad
great.
Hatter, like how they sneak the Mad Hatter in, and like Deadshot, and I'm blanking on a lot of them.
Is
right now.
Azrael in that one?
Azrael is in that one. You don't know he's Azrael yet. And like, there's just so many cool things that like they were hinting towards a sequel. There's the one, like, I think it was added in a patch later on of there was the boat, and you find the secret code to go inside the boat, and it was teasing Scarecrow and all this stuff. Like, there are so many cool things that I played that game for years, and I still play it probably once every 2 years or so, just to go back and relive it. So
Even the tiny like world building stuff was really cool. Like you'd fly or you'd glide around, and then you'd hear like enemies talking on your radio.
I know those
dropping in on them.
It's so cool, just like to hear them talk about like like the bat comes, like I'll take him on, and then you just glide in and like smash his skull,
And then they talk about how terrified they are, and you're like, that's right.
Yeah, but I will say the Riddler trophies are the most egregious in that one. I love that Asylum and Night, like the base game of Night, have the same amount of Riddler trophies, and Asylum's very tiny and Night is very expanded. And where in City is the median of size and had like, I think, more than twice the amount of trophies in both of those games. So, yeah, it was bad. I did it. At one point, only once did I catch the Riddler because I was way too lazy to do all of those over and over again. So.
Tina,
My turn? What did I put? We're on PS3? Oh, yeah. I put a couple. I put like 5, and then I was like, all right, Tina. And I deleted a few. I can go either way here. Maybe I'll say Journey. So I put down Portal 2, Journey, Mass Effect. I had others too. But I'll say Journey because I think it's one of the most impactful like moments in a game that I remember, because I played mostly like solo, because you're supposed to team up with someone. And I played mostly solo, like running into people, but then they'd run off. And I didn't really like get that feeling that everyone else had, that the game was supposed to capture, that everyone else was talking about. And then towards the end, like around the midway point, I had this one companion, and we went through everything together, and it was such a bonding moment. And then, you know, the towards the end, when you're like that final cutscene, when you're shooting down that passageway up into the air. So you're supposed to do that side by side with your companion, but something glitched out. I'm like, we were hand in hand at the time, and then we're flying through, and I'm flying through alone. And I was like, maybe at the other end I'll see them again. And no, never. And then I found out that other people had like flown through together, and it's this beautiful crescendo moment, and I missed out on it. So in a in a weird way, it's like a great moment that I knew I was supposed to achieve that like made this so memorable for me. But it's also just beautiful. Look at that thing.
Yeah, it's one of my I don't know what to pick from this era. Journey is one of the most emotional experiences I've had playing a game. That the descent or the ascent up the mountain when the frost gets to you, and then everything after where you're just beautifully flowing through this open sky I was in tears the entire time.
Yeah, it's mesmerizingly beautiful. Yeah. But yeah, even in the game messing up its like most beautiful bonding moment, I still somehow found a way to weirdly enjoy it.
Yeah,
so,
there's a power.
I felt
to
like
it.
that. Yeah, I felt like that was pretty remarkable.
Yeah. Speaking of Marks, Tom Marks.
Remarkable.
You and the segues.
I was a little stuck on this one because LittleBigPlanet was one of the first games that I 100%ed and really got obsessed about. But I think my answer is actually Valkyria Chronicles, because Valkyria Chronicles is one of my top 5 games of all time. I've beaten it on PS3 and PC, and I'm extremely excited to play the third one, the fourth one when it comes out on PS4, although it's coming out on all the systems now. But man, Valkyria Chronicles is a good game. There's not really anything else like it, right? It's a turn-based third-person shooter, real-time strategy tactics JRPG set in an alternate reality World War II. Like, it's just the weirdest amalgamation of things that shouldn't work, and they come together to make this very, very cool whole. I was also super crazy disappointed because I didn't have a PSP when the second one came out, and the second and the third were only for PSP, and I recently started playing the second one. It's really not as good. Like, it's great because it's still more Valkyria, but it's just everything they did just slightly worse for a lot of different reasons. And I was bummed about that, but man, the first game is so good, and I love the kind of anime, hand-drawn, watercolor almost art style that it has going on.
It's a great one. Yeah,
Valkyria Chronicles is just a very, very, very good game, and very, very excited for the next one. And that one wasn't super happy, joyful. That game's about the Holocaust, okay?
Well, you also put maybe
LittleBigPlanet,
which is a pretty joyful
that
game.
Is a pretty
so
game.
We're going to pretend like you said LittleBigPlanet.
Okay.
And for me, Journey was one of those ones that was in contention. Quick shout out to BioShock, which I actually played on 360, but also replayed again on PS3. And it's one of those games where I sort of had gaming fatigue, and that brought me back in.
Yeah.
And just hooked me at that time. Okay. But I do think The Last of Us is still, like, I can recall playing that game in my college apartment, sitting in my bed at like 2 a.m. finishing that game, or like hitting the ends of different seasons and just sort of sitting there dumbfounded with my jaw hanging, literally like, wow, I can't believe they did that. Wow, I can't believe it went there. And I cannot wait for 2. I need to know what they're going to do with that game if it can live up to 1. But this was just one of the most like sort of complete affecting experiences I've ever had with a game.
Absolutely. And it's one of those things. I played it when I got a PS4. And my girlfriend, who's not really super into video games, would sit down and just watch and just like ride the experience with me. And at the end of winter, like that, all that stuff happened. She's like, "What? Why is this video game doing this? What is happening right now?" Yeah.
They do such a good job with the character arcs and like diving into their drama and trauma rather, and how that's affected them and how that changes between the relationship. It's pretty good. I only didn't put this on my list because you put it on yours.
I'm sorry,
except for Journey.
Yeah, Journey. Like, I don't mind stealing.
Yeah, I had a good story behind it.
Wasn't cheerful enough for me.
No,
not enough joy.
I thought you were going to say it was too cheerful for you. You're just like, we learned a lot about Tom. Moving on to PS Vita.
Yeah.
For those who had it, I wanted to say Lumines. To be fair, I have not played through Persona 4, so don't knock me for not having that as my one. But Lumines, I am like, Tetris is one of my favorite games of all times, and Lumines just hit me in the same way that Tetris hit me when I first played that game, and the way it blends the music into the gameplay just was on another level for me. I played that game constantly when I got a Vita. Anyway.
Rest in peace, the Vita. Rest in peace, Greg Miller. Not yet. I never owned a Vita because, again, I knew what things were, and I knew looking at the Vita, I was like, it's bad.
Oh,
I'm just trying to like light all of these fires just so people.
Barrett, it's been great having you on the show.
All right, see me
Get
every
out.
Thursday on Mario Tennis, whatever. Chat.
Toenails.
But I know that Undertale is sort of like making the slow roll of being released everywhere, and so I would just say Undertale. Also, just, I've never played Persona 4, so that seems like the only other game that I'd be into on the Vita. But Undertale is like one of my other favorite games of all time. I very much cried at, like, I played through the game and like the neutral ending, and I was like, oh, that was fun, that's a cool experience. And then my buddy Alex was he hit me up, he's like, all right, do True Pacifist and get like the ending. And I played through it again 2 days later, and like my girlfriend I'd been talking to about Undertale beat it again, and I'm like sobbing at 3 a.m. And she wakes up and she's like alarmed. She's like, "What happened to you?" Like I was like, "I beat Undertale." She's like, "Didn't you do that like 2 days ago?" I was like, "Yeah, but it's different now." And yeah, that game is just so, it's heartfelt and it's very silly at times and it's very real at times. And I love it. So if you have a Vita and you haven't played Undertale yet, play Undertale.
And for someone who also didn't have a Vita.
Yeah, I didn't have
Tom.
a Vita either. But I tried to go like more downloadable games, right? Because that's what it does, and that's what I knew of it. So one of my favorite games of all time that was on there was Fez. Just Fez will stick with me forever. I love that the 100% in Fez is 206%, which I did. I used to walk through for some of them, but I did do that for this game because I was obsessed with it. I think it's a lovely art style, very cheerful, again, very my style in terms of how happy it is. But yeah, I'm a massive puzzle platformer fan, so this one was pretty easy for me in terms of.
Did you partake in the community's discovery of the Black Monolith thing?
No, so I played it. Played it a little bit after launch, so I like.
You weren't part of that.
I missed any of the any of the ARG stuff or the hype around it, and I just got to kind of experience what was there, which is a ton. It's a dense game.
And Tina, what about you for Vita?
So I wrote Rayman Origins, but then in parentheses I wrote, but really Final Fantasy X.
Yeah.
fair.
But since we already talked about Final Fantasy X, which I did replay on the Vita, and was probably the most use that I got out of my Vita. But Rayman Origins is great because you can I think it also came out on Vita, Rayman Legends, but I like Rayman Origins better because it was less about being super collaborative and more about like slapping your friends around, including even on the loading screen. So I just remember having a lot of good times trying to beat levels with your friend, with your co-op buddy, but also trying to screw them over too. That's that perfect balance that you want out of a game.
Yep. Perfect. The Rayman platformers, I love those. I wish they would do more. Moving on to the final PlayStation console that we know of in existence currently.
No, the final one ever.
Yep, they're making no
show's
more.
canceled.
The PS4. Barrett, I'll start with you.
Oh, okay. We'll start with me. Surprisingly, not God of War right now.
Yeah.
And that's just because Persona 5 was personally my game of the year last year, and it's one of my favorite games just this generation in general. And it was my come to Jesus moment of Persona, because I'd make fun of so many people before I played 5, like Andrew Goldfarb, people out there like Alex O'Neill, who were just like, oh, dude, Persona, like anime. And I was like, yeah, cool, I love Pokemon, I guess. But and then I played Persona 5 for work, and I had to play I basically had to get to the first boss fight, which was Kamoshida, so I had to play 15 hours of the game. And so after 15 hours, I was like, damn it, I think I really, really love this game. And I played so much so that I wasn't able to transfer the save I had at work to my personal save back home. So I had to play the first 15 to 20 hours again at home.
That's dedication.
And but that's the thing, I got sort of burnt out on it for a couple months, and then I left, and then I came back, and then in a sprint at the end of the year, beat the entire thing before 2017 ended, and I was just in love with it. And that this is another game where it's so cool, and the fighting mechanics feel just slick, and everything just in this game is slick.
The music,
the UI, the music. I owned. I convinced a personal friend of ours, Joey, of before she even bought the game, to buy the soundtrack, because I had a theme of Morgana on my PS4, and it would play one of the sort of generic songs, and she was like, this is groovy, I like it. And so I played it, and it's this is another game near the end though where it also was very emotional for me because it's all about friendship and love and all that sappy stuff. And weirdly enough, that does get to me. And there are like 2 character moments where it just really, really messed me up. And also, if you get the true ending of just like where the main character is at and where all the friends are at was just very, very emotional for me. So that was another weird association with my girlfriend where I had just beaten it and I'm like crying and like it's really like they're all happy and stuff, and then she like comes home and she's like, hey, help me with groceries. So I have to like go out there and I'm like very emotional, like stopping myself from crying in public and like helping with groceries.
Fine,
and
I'll take them myself.
she's like, what is wrong with you?
These
So-
onions came undone. It's a lot.
I feel like you have a very dedicated girlfriend here. That's
Oh yeah. She definitely goes through the motions with me with these video games.
If there was ever a game deserving of like best style of a game, it is just so cohesive and so great. It was one of my favorite games of that year too.
Yes.
Tina.
Well, I'm gonna not say God of War because I know you are. So spoilers. So I'll say Resident Evil 7.
Yeah.
Because it's super creepy. And it was the first for a long time that they kind of like went back to their roots on, which was cool. And I also just I have a like horror movie and game buddy that I like. We just do these things together. We're super into horror. I actually haven't even finished Resident Evil 7
wow.
because
that
she
scary.
needs to be like by my side and not covering her eyes. Because that's cheating and I need support. But yeah, there's just all these like really, really tense moments, and the whole time I'm like squeamish on the edge of my couch, and both of us are screaming, and it's a lot going on. Meanwhile, like one of the main enemies in the house is just like slowly walking towards you, and I'm just like squealing, running away.
So
It's always
yeah.
the dad's probably the creepiest as far as I'm concerned.
Also the grandma freaks me out.
Yeah,
Ooh,
yeah.
yeah.
I haven't gotten to anywhere where she's like actually moving, aside from just like disappearing
I
and
would just-
appearing
yeah,
places.
that's in
Yeah.
general.
Yeah, and I'm just like, something's gonna happen with you, and I don't like it already.
Did you play it in VR at all?
No, absolutely not. No, actually, I did. I tested it out, and it was so like the response was so laggy, and like the frame rate was just so awful. I started feeling kind of like nauseated. So yeah. And also, yeah, he's like right in your face, and I don't like that.
I don't want to.
I did not like that.
That's definitely one of the scariest experiences I've had with a game recently.
Yeah.
It is so I haven't finished it either. Partially,
It's
out
hard
of fear.
to. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Tom, what happy game?
Move on from this.
So the feel-good game I've picked is Celeste, because I'm predictable. It's funny because I was actually choosing between Celeste and God of War, which are the 2 games we gave 10s this year.
Yep. You and me.
Yeah, exactly. But no, Celeste is definitely my pick. That game affected me emotionally in a very, very real way, and it affected me from a gameplay standpoint of I never thought I'd play a platformer that felt better than Super Meat Boy, to be perfectly frank. Super Meat Boy is one of my favorite games ever. And platformers, if you can't tell, hey, I really like platformers. And this game is as close to a platformer perfection as you think you can get when it comes to specifically like movement-based skill platforming, not combat, not like there's a lot of games that do different things than this that are also phenomenal platformers, but just in terms of getting from point A to point B, I don't think you can get better. And then on top of that, the story it tells is
Very emotional.
very emotional and very genuine, and it's a story that I have never really seen in a game this good, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Like, that was one of the things that caught me about it, was there are a lot of games that tell very, very emotional, deep stories about depression or about finding yourself, about believing in yourself, but generally the games that lean into that narrative side of things are not necessarily trying to do much more than that, and this game was doing them both, and neither felt like a side thing, and neither felt like one was more important than the other.
Right.
And that just really hit me hard. And man, I will love Celeste till the day I die. I've beaten every level in it so many times I can't count. When it came out on, or when I got it on Switch after launch, I replayed the entire thing on Switch, all the levels. Like I just love that.
Yeah, and we were all in like a competition at one point to see like
Doing
how
speed
fast
runs
we
of that
doing
How
that
fast we could do that first
Oh
level.
man, and I remember beating Mitchell Saltzman at one point, and it was like right over a minute, and then he came at me with like 45 seconds. I was like, all right, well, I give up.
Well, it's a great example of a game, and I know we got to hurry, but it's a great example of a game where you play the first chapter. It's hard. You die a lot.
Yeah.
You get to the end, and you're like, yeah, I did something. Then you beat the game, and you go back to the first chapter, and you're like, this is easy. Like
Let's
this
mess
is
around and like
nothing.
see what we can
Yeah.
do.
Yeah, and that's incredible because you don't unlock anything. There's no upgrades in the game except for like the thing you get in the second to last chapter that's only for those chapters.
Yeah.
So the fact that it's you don't even realize how much better you're getting until you go back to the old levels is so cool.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy how the message of that game of like wanting to find a way to be better and figure out who you are is sort of built into the game's positive message and the gameplay itself.
It's literally about climbing a mountain
Yep.
to face yourself.
Metaphorically and physically.
Yeah, it's great.
If you couldn't have guessed by now, mine is God of War.
Oops, sorry.
Celeste was my game of the year up until I played God of War. And
fair.
I really enjoyed the God of War games in the past. I've played through most of them and the ones on PSP as well, and did really enjoy them. But the evolution of this franchise in this game was just so astounding to me. When I was playing it through for review, I would get to like little story beats and little gameplay bits where I would say out loud to myself, this is special. And the only other person in the room was my girlfriend. And was like, she was looking at her phone, like, what are you talking? Like, what's going on? Like, no, this is it meant so much to me, this experience as I was playing it, and both in the gameplay and in the story, and how it marries those two things so well. Everything in this game, and I talked a little bit about it in the review, it just feels so purposeful. Like every inch of this world, the characters, their story, the gameplay hooks, all of it feels built out and purposeful, but also something that they actually really tested and like narrowed down how to make this work the best we possibly can. The prime example for me of that is Kratos' axe. The Leviathan axe is one of my favorite weapons in a game in I can't remember how long. The feeling of it coming back to you in the controller, like the way the rumble feels, is so precise and so satisfying that I said in the review, but like I just kept throwing that thing in the beginning of the game because I was like, I just want to see how this thing flies.
I mean, even
Yeah,
like
it's fun.
20 hours in, when you're on top of a mountain, you're just like, let's see like how far we can.
Yeah,
yeah,
totally.
well, and trying to throw it at ravens, and I'm like, I can arc it through the air like this, and maybe it'll go that way. And just the way they do that, and the way they layer in the characters, the side characters, to not just Kratos and Atreus' story, which is so meaningful and amazingly well told and acted, but these side characters as well. They just feel so fleshed out and so built into this world. I want Corey to make so many more of these games. Just make them already. Bring God of War 2/5 out already.
All right, you've convinced me. I'll play this for a third time this year. Jesus.
That's a lot of times.
Yeah, it's absolutely a fantastic game. If you haven't played it already, you probably should. I would
Do it.
say we all agree.
Yeah.
It's good.
So those are some of our favorite games from every PlayStation platform in existence.
Thank you so much, Tina, in
Sorry,
the third
PSP.
chair.
Yeah, thank you.
And where did Tom go in the fourth chair?
What a surprise. If you're watching, you may notice a difference, and if you're listening, you will now hear the difference.
Yes.
Tina had to leave. She had a very important meeting to attend to.
Yeah. And we already made her very late for it.
Yeah.
Very bad.
Yes, yeah. It's her Parappa the Rapper.
Yeah, it's
Thesis. Yeah.
Well, no, it's not even the thesis. She's trying to get my show canceled so she can do a
The
Parappa
Parappa
the
show.
show.
Yes. Good, because your shows
Is that
are
what that's
weird.
for? I should go join that meeting. I want to support that.
Tom, you're also on the show.
We are going to round out the show, episode 550, with some viewer questions.
Hooray!
These questions come from the Podcast Beyond Facebook group.
Yes. Ooh.
If you're not a member, join that group. It's pretty great. You can search.
Facebook.com/group/ovenmint/dash/beyond.
No, it's not.
347.
It's not that at all, Barrett. It is facebook.com/groups/podcastbeyond.
Dash oven mitts.
Nope,
Dash.
no. Ignore everything after the dash, and don't put the dash. These questions come from there. Thank you to everyone who submitted questions. If we didn't
We
get
had a
to
lot
yours.
of them. We had a lot of great ones.
Yes, a lot of decom questions, which thank you. I
We're
appreciate
already
it.
running
See
late,
you.
so we had to cut a bunch. Which
Yes.
that's on me.
That's
I'm
Barrett's
sorry
fault.
if you're mad. You can yell at me.
Yeah, there's a lot to yell at him for, so it's understandable. First, we're going to start with Andrew McMahon's question. What game could you play for 550 hours?
Now, Tina,
exactly that amount.
So Tina gave us some
Answers for all.
for all of these. And so the answers she had for this one was Mario Tennis.
The PlayStation hit.
Yes,
Mario
the
Tennis
PlayStation hit Mario Tennis Aces. So yeah, it's just it's a fun fad game right now that'll probably die out soon because the Bowser Jr. meta is crazy. But yeah,
Well, when PlayStation All-Stars Tennis Royale comes out, then you'll see the true game. Do you have an answer, Barrett?
I was thinking about this, and right now I don't know if I have an answer for like current games. But I would say that I've probably put that amount of time in the original Star Wars Battlefront 2.
Nice. On the PSP?
No, on the PlayStation 2, the true version of the game.
You know, that's got working online on PC.
I know, I do. Oh,
can
I
play it
remember
right
because
now.
I remember going to my friend's house who owned it, because PC came out later, right?
Yeah.
And he had it like a couple of years later, and he was playing Battlefront 2 with online. I was like, what? When did this happen? My mind was like,
What witchcraft is this?
I know, exactly. I was like, why couldn't I do this on my PS2? And then I learned, because doing online for PS2 was super complicated.
Tom, what about you? Do you have a game?
I have played League of Legends for over 550 hours.
Yeah.
I don't play League anymore, but I definitely did that. I probably got close to that with Minecraft too, because I was crazy into redstone stuff for a while. I have a few hundred hours in Terraria. Probably the game that, like, if you had to put me on a desert island and told me to only play that until I hit 550, I could probably do that with Slay the Spire right now, which is this deck building game, not card game like Hearthstone, but like deck building where you draft cards and you build up a deck, and it's very, very, very fun right now. Still in early access on Steam, but very, very good.
Cool.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a current game right now I would play for that long. I did play God of War for 600 hours before the review. I really did my homework, so
Wow.
I did that. That's not true. I would.
Schneider, fire this man.
No, please don't. I have, but Spyro's coming, and Kingdom Hearts.
You're too close to
Yeah,
this.
we need
Spider-Man.
him.
You can't
We need
review
him for
any
all
of
of those things, to be fair.
No, he's too close to Kingdom Hearts. Never. You can't do that to him.
I will finally get Kingdom Hearts power. I would say probably Tetris. I have definitely put at least 550 hours, or SSX Tricky. I played that for an ungodly amount of time back in the day. I had it on, I think, PS2 and GameCube, and I played it so much. Like, it was actually one of my mom's favorite games. So we would play like at least 2 or 3 races, or like trick challenge races, competitions against each other, at least 2 or 3 before dinner every night for like 3 years. That was
awesome.
That was our like go-to. Hey, we need to play a game for 20 minutes. We're playing SSX.
That's a wonderful
One of the
story.
more current games like that came out on Switch last year. Sorry, I'm just a Switch fanboy. I apologize. But it's the game I have the most hours in on the Switch, which is Mario Kart 8. Which is 100. I think right now it's 160 hours I have in Mario Kart. So probably by the end of the Switch era, it'll probably be to at least 500.
And I'll be the same with Uncarded when that comes out in 2020. Moving on. I'm so sorry. Emmanuel Alejandro asks, what is your favorite underrated Disney movie? Tina, what would you say? Proxy by Barrett.
I'm very smart, and I'm very successful, and I'm awesome.
All those things
And
are true.
I would say that there is no underrated Disney movie, but also Big Hero 6.
I would agree.
Which was exactly what she said before she left.
Yes, that was word for word. I'm very impressed. I would actually kind of agree of like the modern age of Disney. Big Hero 6 kind of gets like the short end of the stick. Like it's coming to Kingdom Hearts 3. It has an animated show on Disney XD
But why
now.
didn't it never get a proper sequel? You
Yeah,
know? Like
like-
it's so weird that like when my girlfriend and I watched it from like our experience, like we watched that and it was like, this is the new franchise.
I
Like,
loved it, yeah.
Do it, and they never.
San
never-
Francisco as a like
cool.
cityscape. The artistry in that city is so gorgeous. I
Yeah,
want
it's
that
really great.
plastered over my wall, like
Yeah.
the city shot of it. It's amazing. I would say definitely of like the current era. That's a good answer, Tina.
Yeah, you're welcome. Our producer in the back helping me this week since I'm on the show, Brian Malkowitz, said Sword in the Stone, which I respect.
I get that,
'Cause I
yeah,
feel like
yeah.
it doesn't get like the love that it does deserve as like a classic Disney movie.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Tom?
Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace.
It's technically not Disney though.
Not Disney at the time.
But
But
technically,
now-
Yeah.
technically still, I feel like the distributing rights still is weirdly under Fox for some reason.
Fine.
But
all right.
once Fox is under Disney,
Yeah, true.
his answer will be 100% correct.
So if you're watching this post-merger, that's my answer. I don't know, man.
2019 when Darksiders is out.
I think that one answer that I might go with is Lion King 1.5.
Ooh.
So
that.
there was
Yeah.
a generation, or there was an era where Disney was like, let's make sequels to all our amazing movies, and they were just all garbage. Like they just didn't need to exist. But that one is just the Lion King as told from Timon and Pumbaa's side of the story,
Yeah.
and it's like not a bad movie. Like it's a very
the
good movie.
Rosencrantz and
Yes.
Guildenstern without being like there's a play called Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead, and it's basically that but without the existential crisis
Yes.
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
middle of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that that's the
respect it.
direction they decided to take with that.
Oh, absolutely.
Mine, I would say, because it is a couple of them are the ones that people who want Kingdom Hearts worlds, these are the ones they say the most. So just the era of Disney animated movies that sort of were like outside the new renaissance that people talk about. So Atlantis,
Atlantis is great.
Treasure Planet.
Okay, so I was actually thinking Treasure Planet, but I wasn't sure if that was actually Disney.
I'm like 99% sure.
Atlantis and Treasure Planet, both excellent picks right
Not,
now.
I'm so sorry. Treasure Planet's real fun though. Yeah, those two sort of stick out to me. I loved The Emperor's New Groove as a kid. I don't know if it's like a great Disney movie, but I enjoyed
think
it
it's
a lot.
absolutely
No,
great.
it's-
and
it's
I
I
don't
haven't
phenomenal.
watched it
I think
since
it's
a
perfectly
kid.
rated. You know,
Yeah,
like I
yeah.
think it's people have got a good nostalgia for it. It's
Yeah,
not like
that's fair.
an instant classic, but it was like a solid late 90s, early 2000s goofy take on a sort of princess kind of movie, you know?
And I wish people who sort of love like classic Disney and the new Renaissance area would just give a little more credit to Hercules. I feel like people our generation love Hercules, but there are people who don't consider it like in the same breath as Little Mermaid and Lion King and stuff. And I love that movie.
Hercules is really, really good.
It's got such a good soundtrack.
My answer would be I don't know. I was really trying to think of something snarky to say, but
Then we'll move on. I appreciate that. Tahoe Ray Nevada asks, "Hey Tahoe,
Hi.
are Tom's pies as good as they look?" Tom, you are not allowed to answer this because you have a bias.
You do.
You make them.
and I will be the one who's the complete opposite of a bias, which is I've never had Tom's pies.
Whoa.
I know, and I'm very
How-
upset.
I
I don't
brought
know.
like 2 dozen pies into this office, and you've never had a slice.
So there was one time where
I'm
you brought
making
a
pie
bunch
tonight.
of them.
I'm making pie tonight. This is what's happening.
Boy,
There's
we need
one
to have
point
you on shows where
where you-
people haven't had your pie more often.
There was one point where you brought in a bunch, and I was out of the office for some reason for work-related stuff. And then I feel like every time that you do bring pies in, by the time I finally hear about it, or by the time I get to the area where the pies were, they're gone, and I'm just like, God,
I feel bad about
damn
that.
it."
They do go quickly.
They do, because I hear they're amazing, and I want to try one.
Tina by proxy did say, of course. They're delicious. And I can confirm, I actually didn't have one of your pies until pretty recently, probably the last batch you brought in. But I love them, and I can't wait for you to make more for Barrett, and so I can get an extra slice.
Thanks.
Our final question of Beyond episode 550 goes to Chris Chamberlain, who asks, what sidekick from any video game franchise would you want to have your back? Tina, from the ether, what was your answer?
I forget what she said.
Potato GLaDOS.
Oh yeah, Potato GLaDOS.
GLaDOS, okay.
Or Garrus from Mass Effect because she's sort of attracted to him, which I think a lot of people are. So I
Fair,
understand.
totally fair.
Yeah. Barrett.
I'm Team Thane though.
I would say Clank from Ratchet and Clank. I love the homie. He can like crawl into space and like he's like the sort of R2-D2 of that world, but can actually speak and be sassy and funny. And I would just love to hang out with him and do cool stuff and missions and whatnot.
I think I'm gonna get this wrong. I think her name is Goombella from Paper Mario.
No, you're not wrong. I think there's definitely a Goombella in the
The
Mario
one
Cinematic
that will
Universe.
tell you everything you need to know about things. Like she has her ability is called Tattle, and you
Oh,
tattle, and it
yeah.
tells you she knows everything. She knows everything. You could look at any person and be like, "Hey, tell me about that dude," and she'd just like have their life
Why does
history
she know it? Who
alongside
knows,
their
but-
attack and health and weaknesses. We're ready to rule the world.
Yep. Who was the? This wasn't my exact thought, but now that you've brought Paper Mario up, who was the Cloud companion in that game?
Cloud Strife.
Yeah, it was definitely Cloud Strife. Yeah,
The purple one?
I think so. Yeah,
She was like the big,
Yeah.
blustery woman. She was like an opera singer or whatever. I
Yeah.
don't remember her name, but
So I'm only saying her right now and being reminded of her because I, in like 6th grade, had to write an essay for like some like placement class thing, and I wrote you had to write a short story, and I wrote one based on that character and her world.
So this is the
I
equivalent
wrote
of
her,
the
like,
Parappa,
wow.
like your
Yeah.
equivalent to the Parappa
Yeah, that was-
thesis.
I had no idea that was going to be a question on the test, where it was like because it was a creative writing sort of thing, and they were like, but the final question was write a short story of like 400 words, and I'm like, I was just playing Paper Mario. That one's a cool character. Clouds are great. Here we go.
that's
And then
amazing.
I wrote that.
I
Story.
really like that actually.
I want to read Jonathan Dornbush's Paper Mario fanfic really bad.
First, I'll give you my Harry Potter fanfic, and then we can talk. Yeah, I will choose that right now because I feel like any other sidekick choice would be too generic. Clank was definitely on my list as well. Not Donald in Kingdom Hearts because that dude dies like straight up in 5 minutes every fight. Like he is the first to go down.
He's a terrible.
Yeah, and
I want
he never heals you when you need him to.
I want Atreus, but only in his moody phase in the middle of the game where he's like doesn't
Oh,
listen
that's
to
the
me.
worst part.
Yeah, I know. I want that to give myself a challenge.
I want to
whip him into shape.
I like the idea of like Tom, the joyful man, and Atreus, the
moody
crappy teen
little-
who's like,
You got it.
preteen.
You got to admit it's a sitcom in the making.
yeah,
It is.
Oh,
It
I'd
really
watch
is.
that. Thank you so much, Chris, for that question. Thank you to Andrew, Emmanuel, Tahoe, and everyone else who asked questions that we could not get to on episode 550 of Beyond. If you've made it this far in the show, thank you so much for listening. We are pretty far along.
Thank you so much for hanging out with us for 550. I know we're not the usual cast of characters on this show, but we're also prepping for Comic-Con, so Max and Brian are working really hard to
Hard at work.
Yes, hard at work.
They're writing the entire show.
They are.
please watch that show.
So Comic-Con will be fun, and that's where almost all of us will be next week.
Yeah.
And so
Next week, wow.
I know. Don't. Oh God. So Max and Brian will be back next week for Beyond and whatnot. So we were just we came together because we knew we wanted to do something, at least something fun and goofy for 550. So
Look back on our favorite memories.
and so we figured, hey, let's do this while we let the adults who are usually on this show let them do their work and not have to worry about 550.
So if you've been listening to this episode all the way through, thank you. You've made it to the bonus secret ending.
Dude, I didn't get told. I thought you wanted me on. I thought you valued my opinion.
Oh, no, absolutely.
No, I get it. I'm a pinch hitter. Whatever. Whatever.
It's not.
Maybe for you, Barrett. No, absolutely, Tom. Tom. I really wanted to have you on the show. I think we have awesome in-office discussions about games all the time.
I get it.
I want them
and
on
you're
the
like one
record.
of the nostalgic boys.
Yeah.
So that's why when we came up with. Because this
You're part of the classic
topic
core.
of the show was not thought of until we had to
Keep
bring
digging
it
the
in.
hole. Keep digging the hole.
With your Shovel Knight shovel.
All right.
Anyway.
Join me and Tom on our Toenail podcast
Don't
this
listen to-
Thursday.
This is devolved. I do want to say, though, before we wrap up, if you're listening, thank you so much. I've been listening to Beyond as a fan. I was listening since episode 1, and so it means a lot for me to be here.
25 years ago.
Yeah, 25 years ago when I was 2 or 1? 1. I don't know how time works. Maybe 2. Thank you so much for listening as a fan so long for the show to be here, to be celebrating this big milestone episode, and to have celebrated 549 live with so many amazing fans. Meant so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you for listening to all of our goofy reminiscing. If you love this show, remember, Beyond is now found at beyond.ign.com on Wednesdays at 3 p.m. Pacific. You can listen to it on all other platforms, watch it on YouTube, listen to it on iTunes or any other podcast streaming services around the world on Thursdays, 24 hours later. So be sure to come to beyond.ign.com to get all of the PlayStation news first. And if you're watching on any of those many platforms, be sure to rate, subscribe, tell your friends. That is how the show survives.
Set notifications for YouTube so you know whenever a new episode goes up.
Ring that bell, as the kids say. I'm too old for that.
It's a new lingo thing.
Yeah. But thank you so much for listening to Beyond episode 550. My name is Jonathan Dornbush. Thank you, Barrett Courtney. Thank you, Tom Marks. Thank you, Tina Amini. I was going to say not Amini, and then I messed up myself. Thank you, Tina. Beyond.
Beyond!
Beyond!
Beyond.
Beyond!
Beyond.
Beyond.